What's up, guys? Welcome back to Savage Rounds with Xavier. Today for you, we've got episode 30. I've been talking about it all week. I could not be more excited to talk about it and watch it. We've got UFC 294, Makhachev taking on Volkanovski for the second time this year, and Usman versus Chimaev in the co-main event at 185 pounds. Both Volkanovski and Kamaru Usman stepping in on about 10 days' notice. They got announced just about the same time. But regardless, both fights are absolute bangers, and there are some really fun fights on this card leading up to the main, and some fun fighters as well. Let's just jump right into it. Kicking off the night, we've got Sharaputdin Magomedov taking on Bruno Silva. Sharaputdin, this is going to be, I'll read out his stats first. 29 years old, 11-0, 6'2". I didn't see any reach stats. 5-0. Obviously, he's undefeated in his MMA career, and this is his UFC debut. His last fight was an 8-second round 1 knockout of Kushal Voss, and that was back in, that's supposed to say 12-11-22. Obviously, 12-11-23 hasn't happened yet, but December of last year, so it's been a little bit since he's fought. Bruno Silva on the other side, 34 years old, 23-9, 6 feet tall, 74-inch reach, 2-3 in his last 5, and his last fight was a round 2 submission loss against Brendan Allen, and that was in June of this year. Like I said, Sharaputdin, I'm just going to call him Shara because that's what it's listed as on ESPN as well. So Shara, if you haven't seen him fight, he comes from a kickboxing background. He has a lot of kickboxing fights as well, and his style is very kickboxing oriented. You don't see him grapple often unless it's defensively, but he throws a lot of kicks. They're very creative. He's got power in both hands. He's not putting together like crazy slick boxing combinations with the hands. It's more like he follows the hands up, or he follows the kicks up with the hands, and sometimes he'll like blitz in and throw a couple shots like that, but a lot of power. He's good in the clinch, throws good knees, good elbows off the breaks when he's up against the fence, or if he's got somebody pushed up against the fence. And he's taking on Bruno Silva, who, if you've seen him recently, since that Alex Pereira fight where he got smoked all around the ring. Obviously, it was Pereira's toughest fight to date in MMA, but Bruno Silva got hit with so many big shots, and you can see in his recent fights, it may have taken an effect on his chin, may have taken a toll on his chin. He doesn't seem to eat shots the same anymore. We saw him get dropped by a jab from GM3 in his last fight. It was a punch that dropped Bruno Silva, and Brendan Allen was able to jump on the submission from there. But this is going to be a tough test for Magomedov. If you've looked at his past fights, not the best level of competition, so this is definitely going to be his first big test. I've seen a lot of guys calling for a fraud check on him. I don't think this is the one. As long as this fight's standing, which Bruno Silva isn't really a guy that's going to go out there and wrestle as his main game plan. It's not what he does. If he was a guy that was like that, I could totally see the call for fraud. Well, I don't like using fraud check. I could see him losing, but this fight's going to take place and on the feet for the most part. And unless Bruno Silva hurts Shara early, I have a hard time seeing his chin not getting touched by a kick or one of those blitzes that he throws with the hands. So I do think Magomedov gets this one done. I could see first round, second round, but I do think he finishes Bruno Silva on the feet. I think we get a knockout here in Shara's debut. I think the crowd's going to go crazy. Betting wise, I'm waiting on my book to put it up personally. My book has all of the props up so far, except for props for this fight, so I don't know what they're waiting on with this fight, but if you look on Bet Online, you can get his KO line at plus 110. I don't want to pay the 280 for the money line quite yet, even throwing it in a parlay, because if Bruno Silva is able to extend this fight, where we're really yet to see Magomedov in a tough fight down the stretch, so that could get interesting. So I would rather pay the plus 110 for a knockout, which I do think is his most likely path to victory and how he gets it done, to be honest. So yeah, that's the only line I'm considering. I will probably throw a small bet on that once, maybe a unit. I'll probably throw a small unit on that once my book comes out with the line, which again, I don't know why they haven't yet. Next up, there are a few fights I will probably fly through because either I'm not super interested or I think it's going to be a domination. This is one of them. Victoria Dudikova taking on Jinh Yu Frey. Dudikova, 24 years old, undefeated, 7-0, 5'5", 67-inch reach, 5-0 in her last 5. Obviously, she's undefeated with a win on Contender Series, and she's 1-0 in the UFC. Her debut was her last fight, a round 1, 34-second finish of Estela Nunes in July of this year. It was a weird finish. She got tossed and tried to catch herself after Estela got tossed, and she tried to brace herself with her arm, and it just ended up folding in and snapping. So it was a quick fight. We really didn't get to see much of Dudikova. Jinh Yu Frey on the other side, 38 years old, 11-9, 5'3", 65-inch reach, 2-3 in her last 5, and her last fight was unanimous decision loss versus Elise Reed just a month previous to Dudikova fighting. I'm not a big Jinh Yu Frey fan. I think she is a well-rounded fighter. She's okay at everything, but not really great in one area or special at anything. She's a very physically strong woman, but she's going to be at a size disadvantage here. When she's winning, it tends to be her landing more strikes and her pushing her opponent up against the cage, maybe getting a takedown if she can get that. But with Victoria Dudikova, I just think in this spot she's more talented. Jinh Yu Frey has 2 wins in her UFC career, and they're versus, I can't remember one of them, but the other one is Ashley Yoder. So it's not, her wins aren't against a high level of competition. She's been submitted maybe once in the UFC. I think it was by Kay Hansen, who's not in the company anymore. And Victoria Dudikova, she's got fantastic grappling once it gets to the ground. As you can see, obviously it's a small sample size with one Contender Series fight and 34 seconds into a UFC fight, but the takedowns per 15, she's shooting 4.82, so she's going after those takedowns. Once she's on top, she's pretty good. Ground and pound, she goes for the submission. She has a lot of rear naked chokes. Once she gets the back, it's tough. I think she's going to shoot these takedowns. Maybe she doesn't get them early while Jinh Yu Frey is fresh, but I think she will continue to shoot them. And as soon as she gets Jinh Yu Frey down, I think she'll be able to keep her there and win minutes, maybe do damage on top. But I like the submission here. I think she probably finds it in round 2 after working Jinh Yu Frey, trying to get her to the ground. And if not, maybe she wins minutes, gets the decision. But Victoria Dudikova, I think she dominates this fight. Once it's on the ground, I think Jinh Yu Frey is going to struggle quite a bit. I think Dudikova finds the sub, but I could also definitely see her winning a decision if somehow Jinh Yu Frey is tough to submit if she can get to her back. Victoria Dudikova is the pick here. I think she blows Jinh Yu Frey out of the water. I do think there will be a time to fade Dudikova. I think if you can get a girl that stuffs takedowns well and is very good on the feet, or is good on the feet and grappling in general, Dudikova could have a tough time. And I think the fade will be there, but this is not the fight for that. Jinh Yu Frey is not the one. So yeah, Dudikova is the pick here. Next up, Nathaniel Wood taking on Muhammad Naimov. This is an interesting fight. I'm kind of surprised. This is the one I don't think it's short notice, but I'm kind of surprised this was the direction they went for Nathaniel Wood. Muhammad Naimov has 1 win in the UFC, and he was getting beat in it until he got the 1-punch knockout. But regardless, we have the fight made. Nathaniel Wood, 30 years old, 20-5, 5'6", 69-inch reach, 4-1 in his last 5, and his last fight was a unanimous decision victory over Andre Fili back at UFC London in July. That was a very good fight. They both got dropped, and then the last round was a little bit slower. You could tell it was 1 apiece going into the third, and you could tell they were both trying to not get hurt, but Nathaniel Wood ended up edging it out. And Muhammad Naimov on the other side, 29 years old, 9-2, 5'9", 70-inch reach, 4-1 in the UFC, or 4-1 in his last 5, 1-0 in the UFC, and his last fight was a round 2 KO TKO finish over Jamie Mullarkey in June of this year. And in that fight, like I said, he was getting I think he'd been taken down 3 times at that point. Mullarkey was winning the battle on the feet as well. And Muhammad Naimov landed the one big counter shot to kind of drop Jamie Mullarkey, and then he got on and finished with some ground and pound. I do think Nathaniel Wood is better everywhere in MMA. He might be the smaller guy here, but I do think he'll be able to get the takedowns. I think on the feet he'll be the quicker striker. His striking arsenal is better. And I really do think Muhammad Naimov needs to find the knockout punch to win this fight. I think if the longer it goes, the less chance he has of winning. If it goes to decision, I would be very surprised if Naimov wins. unless it's some case where he's like dropping Wood in every round and Wood is just not going away. But I feel like that's kind of a stretch of a result. I think if Naimov wins, it is by knockout, but I could see Nathaniel Wood just being better everywhere and dominating this fight. I think he gets it done by decision here. Like I said, he'll be much quicker on the feet. He puts together better combinations. Naimov, it's a lot of big power in his shots, but nothing crazy. He throws a lot of kicks too. And Nathaniel Wood's going to be better everywhere in my opinion. And I think he gets the victory via unanimous decision. I think he could go out there in 30-27 Naimov, to be completely honest. No bets here for me. And we move on. Next up, I skipped one. Next up, we've got Mike Breeden taking on the debuting and I believe first Indian in the UFC, Anshul Jubli. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure he is the first Indian. Mike Breeden, 34 years old, 10-6, 5'10", 70-inch reach, 2-3 in his last 5, 0-3 in the UFC. His last fight was a round 1 KO TKO loss against Terrence McKinney in August of this year, so it's not too long ago, just over 2 months now. He got knocked out by Terrence McKinney. It wasn't really like he got knocked out cold, though. It was more of like a bunch of shots in the first round, and he kind of just wasn't able to get out of there. He did get hit with big shots, though. Anshul Jubli, on the other side, 28 years old, undefeated, 7-0, 6 feet tall, 69-inch reach, 5-0, obviously, he's undefeated, and 1-0 in the UFC. That was his last fight. It was the road to the UFC final. He took on Jeka Saragi, who does have a UFC fight coming up, if I'm not mistaken, and it was a round 2 KO TKO finish back in February, so it's been quite some time since we've seen him, and it'll be cool to see him in the UFC, see if he can get a win under his belt. And this is an interesting one for me because I think I don't think this is a super high-level fight in general. Anshul Jubli, most of his fights en road to the UFC, he ended up being a slight underdog, and he was able to go out there and beat those guys. Obviously, it's tough for me. I just don't think this is super high level of competition. Mike Breeden, I think he's decently well-rounded. He's got big power. I think 8 of his 10 wins are by knockout. I think he can defend takedowns here. I think Anshul Jubli, to win this, is probably going to need to get takedowns and have control time, or if he's on top, because he is going to be the bigger guy, I think he'll probably need to finish Breeden from the top. I don't think Anshul Jubli gets this one done. I think this is going to be Mike Breeden's first win in the UFC. I think, obviously, he's had a tough run in the UFC so far, but he's a tough guy. I think he can stuff takedowns. I think he can win the battle on the feet. This is not a confident pick at all, but he is my favorite underdog on this card, and I'm totally willing to be proven wrong by Anshul Jubli, but I haven't been overly convinced by anything he did on road to the UFC, and I don't think Jeka Saragi is the highest level of competition either. A Muay Thai guy with very little grappling. I just think Mike Breeden makes this tough, and I'm gonna go with him to get the win. He's sitting at plus 220 right now. I may throw something small on it. If I threw anything on it, it would be half a unit. Like I said, I'm not confident in it. I don't love it, but he is my favorite underdog on the card. I'm not telling anybody to go bet this, but I may throw like a small half unit on it just for fun because I think he can get it done. I think it's a decent underdog spot to take on him. But there's also a world where Anshul Jubli goes out there and he can be dominant on top. Maybe not win the striking battle, but be dominant on top in the wrestling if he can get there and win minutes or find the finish with some ground and pound, because he does have solid ground and pound. But I'm going with the underdog. I'm taking Mike Breeden in this one. Next up, Abu Azaitar taking on Cedric Dumas. Azaitar, 37 years old, 14, 3-1, 5'9", 76-inch reach, 4-1 in his last 5, 1-1 in the UFC. We haven't seen him in quite some time. His last fight was a round 3 KO TKO loss when he was taking on Marc-Andre Barriault in March of 2021. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was a Fight Island card. No, Fight Island was in... I can't remember. UFC 260. I don't quite remember what that was. I don't know. On the other side, Cedric Dumas, 28 years old, 8-1, 6'2", 79-inch reach, 4-1 in his last 5 as well. 1 win on Contender Series, and 1-1 in the UFC. His last fight was a unanimous decision victory over Cody Brundage at UFC Jacksonville in June this year. This is an interesting fight. You know what you're getting with Abu Azaitar. His cardio is okay. He throws big bombs on the feet. He's good in the clinch, and if he can get you down, he can be heavy on top, but he can also be reversed just because he's a smaller guy. Cedric Dumas, also a guy, if you've seen him, you know what you're going to get for him. He's got some unorthodox striking on the feet. His punches are not like your typical punching technique. It's kind of weird. He blitzes in a lot. He does throw very good kicks. He's got good leg dexterity. He goes to all three levels. He's knocked a few guys out with some nice head kicks. And where I think I honestly don't think his striking is what gets this fight done. If in his Contender Series fight, he went out there and got a takedown immediately. The guy was able to get up, but ended up finding himself in a guillotine. And then in his UFC debut, he took on Josh Fremd. He was also trying to get the takedown there when his striking on the feet wasn't working. Josh Fremd was a huge guy. I think that Josh Fremd fight, what happened was Josh Fremd was too big for him. He's probably at 185 pounds, being 6'2", having a 79-inch reach. You're probably hard-pressed to find a guy that is going to be bigger and longer than him, so that was probably a new experience for him, and I think he had a lot of trouble with it. You could see Fremd was physically stronger. He was landing the bigger shots. The shots were affecting Dumas more. And then on the ground, obviously, Fremd is quite heavy just because he's a big guy. Dumas was able to get out of a couple positions, and he even had a chance to take a good position on the back, but I think at that point he was exhausted. And I don't want to say he gave up, but it kind of looked like he gave up. He slipped off the top. It didn't feel like the choke was super, like it wasn't in for super long. He kind of tapped once it was locked. I don't know. It was weird, but he goes out. Cody Brundage, he does much better. Obviously, Cody Brundage on short notice doesn't have great cardio, and we saw it there. Dumas was able to reverse him a lot when he was taken down. He stuffed some takedowns, and he won minutes on top. Not a lot of ground and pound, but he was able to get the win via staying on top and winning minutes. I think he can go out there and do this versus Abu Azaitar. I think he'll have less trouble in the striking because of the height difference, and I think Dumas is going to be able to keep him at range. And I think if he wants it, I think the takedown's going to be there. It might not be a popular opinion, but I do think he can get it. I like Dumas to find a second-round submission here. I think he's going to tire out Azaitar. I think the length on the feet could cause issues for him. Obviously, if Dumas gets hit with a big shot inside, we could have a whole different story here, but I think he'll be able to avoid those and work the takedowns. He does that one where he shoots in, slides under the arm, and picks you up and tries to slam you. He got that one on his Contender Series, and he tried it versus Josh Fremd. Wasn't able to get it there. And Cody Brundage was taking him down, and he was able to reverse it. So I do think if Azaitar gets him down, he'll be able to reverse it. I think he could get Azaitar down, and I think on the feet, maybe he doesn't go out there and knock Abu out, but I think he can make Azaitar think. I think all of this makes him tired. I think in the second round, we see Dumas getting a second-round submission. Betting-wise, his inside the distance is sitting at plus 110 right now. This could also totally end up being a fight where both guys end up looking tired late, because I don't love Dumas's cardio either, to be completely honest with you. He looked good. It looked fine against Cody Brundage, but I think that was because Cody Brundage was so tired, things were easy. So maybe if he gets pushed, it is tougher for him late, which we know even when Abu is tired, he's pushing, he's throwing big shots. So it could be one of those ugly fights, but I do think Dumas gets the better of him here. I think we see a second-round submission. And I forgot, like I said, that Dumas inside the distance plus 110, that's the only thing I'm considering this fight. And to be honest, I don't even really think I'm going to play it. I just wrote it down because I was just scrolling through all the fights, writing down the lines that I consider. And that was the only one really that kind of stuck out for me for this one. Like I said, I probably won't play this. This is going to be a fight I just watched to see Dumas. But yeah, I think he does get the win. Next up, Javid Basharat taking on Victor Henry. Basharat, 28 years old, 14-0, 5'9", 69-inch reach. Obviously, he's undefeated, 5-0 in his last 5 with a win on Contender Series, and 3-0 in the UFC. His last fight was a unanimous decision victory over Matheus Mendonça, and that was in January of this year, so it has been a little bit since we've seen him fight. Victor Henry on the other side, 36 years old, 23-6, 5'7", 68-inch reach, 3-2 in his last 5, 2-1 in the UFC. His last fight was a split decision victory over Tony Gravely in March of this year, so both guys haven't really fought since the first quarter of the year. They fought this year, though, so it's not like crazy inactive. I like Javid Basharat in this spot. I think he is top of the top when you're counting, I'm going to take a drink. I think he is top of the top when it comes to prospects, kind of like this wave of prospects coming up. And he's got skills everywhere. On the feet, he is very steady. His technique is really good. He puts together decent combos. And obviously, he's got the grappling as well. His submission ability is great. He's dominant on top when he gets you down. He's got good ground and pound. Victor Henry seems to be a very tough guy. He's hard to finish. I don't think he's ever been, neither guy, obviously Basharat hasn't because he hasn't lost yet, but in his 6 losses, Victor Henry has not been finished. He's a guy who's going to go out there and throw from awkward angles. He's got some weird footwork, and it's a lot of volume from him. Like, it's another guy, you know what you're getting. It's going to be volume, weird angles, and a lot of movement. He gets hit a lot, too. I think Javid Basharat on the feet, he's quite defensively sound. You can see his striking differential is positive. Both guys are, but it's because Victor Henry throws so much, to be honest. I think Javid Basharat can be good, sound defensive here. I think he can push Henry up against the cage trying to get takedowns. Maybe he gets them, maybe he doesn't. I think he probably does at least have some ground control time, even though you can see Victor Henry's takedown defense is quite decent at 79%. And I just think he'll land the better shots on the feet. I don't think the volume is really going to off-put Basharat. His footwork is quite good as well. He's slippery when he's moving backwards and off to the side. I think he'll counter well, work the takedowns. I think he gets a decision victory here. Like I said, Victor Henry is a hard guy to finish. I don't think we see a submission here or a knockout, but I do like Javid Basharat to get this victory. I don't want to say easily, but quite steadily. Like, I think it'll look like a decent fight for him. I don't think he'll ever look like he's in trouble in this one. And then if you saw my matchmaking video the other day, if he wins this fight, maybe, like I said it yesterday, maybe I was being a little biased because I do like him and I think quite highly of him, but it would be pretty cool to see him versus Adrian Yanez next if he's able to get this win over Victor Henry. Next up, Muhammad Yahya, a newcomer, taking on Trevor Peek. Yahya, 29 years old, 12-3, 5'9", 73-inch reach, 5-0 in the UFC, in his last 5, and this is his UFC debut. His last fight, unanimous decision victory over Suhail Tahiri. That was in February of this year at UAE Warriors. Trevor Peek on the other side, 28 years old, 8-1, 5'9", 70-inch reach, 4-1 in his last 5, with a win on Contender Series, and he's 1-1 in the UFC. His last fight was a unanimous decision loss versus another debuter, just like Yahya, Chepe Mariscal. That was in June of this year. That was a very good performance from Chepe, and obviously, I think he was kind of the blueprint to beat Trevor Peek, and I don't think every guy is going to be able to go out there and do it. Like, I'll talk about it a little bit more when I get to Yahya, but he is not the fighter archetype to go out there and beat a guy like Trevor Peek. At least that's how I see it. I think to beat Trevor Peek, you've got to have good cardio, like very good cardio, because he's going to push a high pace, and even when he's tired, he's throwing wild and can be unpredictable. You've got to be able to wrestle. You've got to neutralize the strikes coming at you, the big shots, and even though it's wild and not technical at all, it is dangerous. Chepe was able to do that. You've got to be able to hold him down. I think you've got to have a chin, because you're going to eat some shots. Chepe took some punches, gave some back, and was able to take him. So I think that's why he was able to get the victory. He has a mix of all of those, and it works very well against how Trevor Peek fights. Muhammad Yahya is not those things, I don't think. He is a guy who fights kind of in early. He's a little bit, I don't want to say he's super bouncy because he's not like bouncing in and out, but he's a little lighter on his feet earlier in the fights. His stance is very open. The hands are down by his hips. He's not fully side on, but kind of. It's not like straightforward like a normal boxer. Or boxer, like Muay Thai, he's not straight on. It is definitely more off to the side. Like I said, it's a very wide stance. He throws a lot of kicks. His hands are always down. He's been dropped and countered off those a few times I've seen watching tape. He does go for the wrestling. I don't think it's nearly good enough to be able to hold Trevor Peek down. I think Trevor Peek will be able to stuff some, and even if Yahya does get him down, Trevor Peek kind of has the Derek Lewis just stand up from takedowns, and Chepe Mariscal was able to subdue that. I don't think Yahya can. Yahya's cardio, although he can fight 3 rounds, we've seen him do it. We've seen him fight 5 rounds, to be honest. But if he's not controlling the pace of the fight, his cardio is not good. He's had trouble down the stretch with guys who are trying to put it on him, and I think Trevor Peek can do that. I think, and like I said, he's been knocked out before. He's been dropped in 3. I don't want to say recent fights, but 3 fights that I watched that were relatively recent, like within the past 3-ish years. I think his style feeds into what Trevor Peek is going to. Trevor Peek's going to be wild, throw a hurricane of strikes at you, and it's not technical at all. He's a true brawler, and I think Yahya is going to get clipped at some point. He's been hit behind the ear quite a bit by looping shots, and when he throws kicks, his hands are down, and he can get hit straight down the pipe. I think Trevor Peek finds a counter or just rushing in because Yahya's hands are down. His striking defense isn't the best. I think he gets clipped. I think we see a knockout here. Trevor Peek, his KO line's plus 100. I already have a unit on that. His round 1 KO line is plus 195. I'm toying with the idea of throwing like a quarter or a half of a unit. I'm not 100% sure yet, but it is something I'm considering. I do, for sure, though, already have the unit down on the KO. I don't want to pay the 170 to win a unit back, because that's what it is. It's plus 100, so I'm putting down a unit. I get a unit back. I don't want to put down 1.7 units to get a unit back when I think Trevor Peek's win condition is a knockout here. Like, he's not a guy that's really going to go out there and win decisions, I don't think so. I'd rather just take the knockout line there. I think he gets it done, but it is going to be interesting just because of the style Trevor Peek fights, and he's a wild guy. And we'll see. It is Yahya's debut. I think Trevor Peek gets it done by knockout, though. Next up, Tim Elliott taking on Muhammad Makhachev. This is a very interesting one. I'm excited for this fight. Kind of like the new guard taking on the old guard. See who can get the victory. Tim Elliott, 36 years old, 20 wins, 12 losses, and a draw. 5'7", 66-inch reach, 4-1 in his last 5. And his last fight was unanimous decision victory over Victor Altamirano in June of this year. Muhammad Makhachev on the other side. I guess it's Muhammad Makhachev, 23 years old, 10-0, undefeated, 5'7", 70-inch reach. His last 5, obviously 5-0, undefeated, and he's 4-0 in the UFC. His last fight was a round 3 submission win over Jafel Filo in March of this year, and that was by far his toughest test. It hasn't all been smooth sailing in the UFC for him. He's definitely had some pushback. Even though he's winning fights, he's getting the fights done, which is what it comes down to. But this will be his toughest test by far. Jafel Filo was able to get him in a nasty knee bar that has kept him out from then until now. I can't remember exactly if he tore stuff or whatever the specific injury was, but his leg was shredded. He was out for quite a bit. He hasn't fought since March, and it is October. Tim Elliott is a guy I think who could possibly go out there and out-scramble Makhachev and make him tired and make him push. His cardio seems decent. Like, we haven't seen him completely death-gassed or anything. But, I mean, Tim Elliott's a guy who can put up pace. He's on the feet. He's super awkward. He's another guy with weird footwork that throws from, like, super odd angles. It'll be interesting to see how Makhachev deals with it. I think, I won't call Makhachev a super prospect, but I do think he is another very, very high-level prospect. So I think he gets this one done. I think he has the skills. I think he can go out there and get the takedowns and make it tough for Tim Elliott to be able to implore that weird, awkward striking that could make it tough for Makhachev on the feet. And I also think Makhachev's a good enough grappler where he'll be able to have positions on the ground where he's dominant and winning those positions. His style of grappling is sticky. It's weird. And he stays on it. You can see Tim Elliott is a high-volume takedown shooter, 3.88 per... I won't say that's super high volume, but higher than most. But Muhammad Makhachev, 7.34. He is relentless with them, and I think that's going to make it tough for Tim Elliott to kind of get off the type of offense he wants to get off to win the fight. I'm not overly confident in it, but I do think we could see Muhammad Makhachev on his back finding a submission. Just from Tim Elliott trying to scramble to get to a better position. And I'm going with Makhachev. I think we do see the round 2 rear naked choke. Like I said, I'm not overly confident. I'm not paying minus 400. I don't want to put him in a parlay either, because if there's a guy that can make it weird and awkward and tire you out with how awkward he is, it's Tim Elliott. So this is one I'm staying away from. The Makhachev subline is plus 200. Maybe something small on that. But again, there's a world where Makhachev is just... He wins the fight, but not by submission. He could find the dominant positions that I'm talking about and not get the submission, and just end up winning a decision here. So I'm not like running to play the sub line at plus 200, even though it is a decent line, I think, for his line being minus 400. But I do think Makhachev gets this win done. I think he continues the train, and we see him ranked relatively soon, taking on a pretty big name, big competition. I think he could be a decent name for the division. Definitely, he'll be one of the bigger names in the division for sure. I'm going Makhachev. If I'm calling my shot, I'm going to say round 2 sub, but regardless, I think he gets the victory here. First fight on the main card, we've got Said Nurmagomedov taking on Muin Gafurov. Said, 31 years old, 17-3, 5'8", 70-inch reach, 4-1 in his last 5. In his last fight was a unanimous decision loss when he took on Jonathan Martinez in March of this year. And Muin Gafurov, 27 years old, 18-5, 5'7", 68-inch reach, 3-2 in his last 5 with a loss on Contender Series, and he's 0-1 in the UFC. His last fight was a unanimous decision loss versus John Castaneda in June of this year. We know what Muin Gafurov's going to do. He's going to come in, he's shooting takedowns. His gas tank is okay. It's not like he super fades, but you can tell as the fight progresses, the takedowns aren't as powerful, aren't as strong. He's easier to get out under from if he's able to take you down, and the power on the feet definitely kind of starts to fade. Said, I think, is a guy who is better everywhere, maybe not in like the direct like takedown wrestling part of the game, but I think he'll be able to scramble versus Gafurov. He's got great submission ability. On the feet, I think he's far better than Gafurov. Gafurov's been hurt by head kicks. We've seen it against Castaneda, I can't remember, him and Gafurov and the other Tajikistan guy. I can't remember his name now. Hold up, I can look right here. Naimov. They both fought on Contender Series and lost to very subpar guys. One was Colin Anglin and one was Chad Anheliger. I can't remember who fought who. It might have been Anheliger that fought Gafurov. I can't remember. One of them fought Gafurov and hit him with an uppercut that dropped him. And then Castaneda was able to get the victory, dropped him with a head kick. Said throws fantastic kicks. I think Said will be able to outpoint him on the feet, keep him at distance with the kicks, so the takedowns aren't as easy to get. I think we could totally see Gafurov shoot in for a takedown and end up getting a guillotine locked up on him. Gafurov had that happen a few times. I think it was Anheliger. He wasn't able to lock it in when he had the attempt. He had a few attempts of it on Contender Series, just wasn't able to fully lock it in. I think Said is a far better submission artist than Chad Anheliger. So if it's in that position where Gafurov's shooting a takedown and his neck is there to snatch, I could totally see Said finishing him there. I could see Said catching him with some sneaky head kick and hurting him that way, and maybe finding a sub on the ground or finishing him with ground and pound. But I think Said can win this fight in all sorts of ways. I just really have a tough time seeing how Gafurov is able to put together a performance that wins enough minutes to win a decision. I definitely don't see him submitting Nurmagomedov unless Nurmagomedov like death gasses in the late in the fight and Gafurov's able to take advantage of that, but I still don't see that happening. I think Said wins this fight quite easily. I think he has all three avenues: points, knockout, submission. I tend to lean points or submission. Betting wise, his sub line is sitting at plus 260, and if you are at a book that has double chance, his sub/points is minus 145. So if you don't think he's gonna not get the knockout, but you think he can win, by sub or decision, and you want to take that, that's sitting at minus 145. That's a decent line for you there. And yeah, I think Saeed gets this one done. I like him a lot in this spot. I don't think Gafurov is quite up to the level of Saeed, and he can do whatever he wants in this fight, in my opinion. Next up, Ikram Aliskerov, Warley Alves. Ikram, 30 years old, 14-1, 6 foot tall, 76-inch reach, 5-0 in his last 5 with a win on Contender Series, and he's 1-0 in the UFC. His last fight was a round 1 KO TKO not a victory over Phil Hawes, and that was in May of this year. Warley Alvarez, 32 years old, 15-6, 5'11", 72-inch reach, 2-3 in his last 5. His last fight was a split decision loss versus Nicholas Dalby in January of this year. He's taking this on, Warley Alvarez I'm speaking of, he's taking this on very short notice. He hasn't fought at 185 pounds since 2014. All his UFC fights have been at 170 pounds, including I think since The Ultimate Fighter, if I'm not mistaken. I can't quite remember. I think it was his last middleweight fight was The Ultimate Fighter, or it was right before The Ultimate Fighter, but since then has not fought at 185 pounds. It's been all 170. Short notice. His cardio already isn't great. I think Ikram is going to look a lot bigger than him. I just don't see how Warley Alvarez. I don't see how Warley Alves can win this fight. I think Ikram steamrolls him. I don't think we see the third round. Maybe it makes it. I could see this making it to the second round, but I definitely don't think we see the third round. I think Ikram probably finds a sub here. He'll be able to get Warley down just because how big he is. Nicholas Dalby had him down at points. Ikram's gonna finish this guy. That's all I have to say on this. Next up, Magomed Ankalaev taking on Johnny Walker. Ankalaev, 31 years old, 18-1-1, 6'3", 75-inch reach, 4-0-1 in his last 5. His last fight was a split draw when he took on Jan Blachowicz in December of last year for the light heavyweight belt. He has not fought since then. It's been quite some time. Johnny Walker, 31 years old, 21-7, 6'6", 82-inch reach, 3-2 in his last 5 in his last fight. Was a unanimous decision victory over Anthony Smith in May of this year. This is an interesting fight. I'm very excited for this one. I think Johnny Walker is very capable of winning this fight. We've seen Ankalaev get clipped before. If Johnny Walker comes out a bit more poised, like we've seen him recently, and he's able to stuff takedowns or possibly get up or just not be under Ankalaev for very long, I think he could go out there and work the leg kicks like Blachowicz did. Obviously, he doesn't have 5 rounds, but I think he could go out there, work the leg kicks. He is super long. Obviously, he's going to be able to land some shots. I think he's got the power to put Ankalaev out. However, he's what we refer to as a glass cannon. The chin is not good. I've seen him get knocked out 3 times in one fight before, like fully sleeping, and then wakes up from another shot and gets up, and then they start fighting again. He gets knocked out again. We've all seen the clip. I don't think Ankalaev's chin is nearly that bad. I wouldn't say bad at all. And I think Ankalaev can be more steady in the first round. He does a little bit more standing than the other rounds. I think he could rush in with one of those blitzes he does. He's got big power on the feet. I could totally see him putting Johnny Walker out in the first round, but also if he goes out there with a wrestling game plan and he gets Johnny Walker down and is heavy on top, maybe landing some ground and pound, hurting Johnny Walker there too. I could see him getting a decision or finishing Johnny Walker on the ground as well, but I do think Ankalaev gets this one. The only bet I considered for this fight is that round 1 KO. It's plus 400, so maybe that's one you throw like a quarter of a unit on to win a unit. Just because I do think there's a decent possibility that he's able to put Johnny Walker out early with a big shot. But yeah, nothing I was like rushing to play. The minus 350 I don't love. And like I'm not running to play Johnny Walker as an underdog either. This is another one I'll probably just sit and watch. So far, I've got the 2 bets I've told you about. I want the Shara KO whenever that comes out on my book. I've got the Peak KO, and then there's one more I'll talk about after. But yeah, for this fight, right before the co-main event, I'm going with Magomed Ankalaev to get the win. And next up, we get to the co-main event. We've got Kamaru Usman, the Nigerian Nightmare, taking on Khamzat Chimaev, Boers. This is an absolute banger. I cannot wait to watch this go down. Kamaru Usman jumping in on short notice like I've talked about all week. 36 years old, 20-3, 6 feet tall, 76-inch reach, 3-2 in his last 5, his last fight being a unanimous decision loss versus Leon Edwards back in March of this year. Khamzat Chimaev, 29 years old, 12-0, undefeated, 6'2", 75-inch reach. Obviously 5-0 in his last 5 because he's undefeated. In his last fight, we haven't seen him in quite a while. It was a round 1 submission over Kevin Holland back in September of last year, so it has been over a year since we've seen him fight. He took a long break between that fight and the Gilbert Burns fight as well. I believe he fought Burns in like February or March of that year, so I guess 2 times in 1 year isn't super inactive. It's actually not inactive at all, but in this fight, Kamaru coming up to 185 pounds, I have a lot of questions. I think, and it's crazy because I love Kamaru. I'm a Kamaru fan. His title reign was awesome. And I think he has trouble in this one. When I picture this fight, and I know both of their skill sets, I just don't think Usman can win this fight. I don't think he's going to go out there and take down Khamzat Chimaev. I don't think he's going to go out there and outstrike Khamzat Chimaev. Not to say Khamzat's a better striker, but just the manner in which he strikes. I don't think it's going to be enough to beat Khamzat. He did it against Colby, though, on the feet quite a bit. I don't know. It's an interesting one. I like Khamzat in this one. I think he can go out there. He's going to be the much bigger guy. I could see him doing that same takedown that I was talking about when I was talking about Cedriquez Dumas. Obviously very different levels, but just they use the same takedown sometime where they shoot in, he like slips under the arm and he's on the back now and he lifts up and slams. I could 100% see him getting that kind of takedown on Kamaru Usman. I don't love the traditional like single or double leg here for him. I think he'll have to go body lock and get him off of his feet to get Kamaru Usman down, but I could totally see that happening. And Khamzat is a huge puncher. Up a weight class. Kamaru obviously hasn't been knocked out super recently in his career. That was the first time. So it's not like he has a bad chin, but he's 36 years old, up a weight class. I could totally see Khamzat Chimaev putting him out. I think Khamzat gets this one done. I have a hard time seeing a submission here, but I like ground and pound. I think Khamzat's going to hurt him on the feet at some point. Maybe Kamaru's tired from trying to defend takedowns, getting slammed. He's off the couch. This seems like a bad fight for him to me. So I think Khamzat gets this one done. His finish line inside the distance is -150, which I wish I could have gotten it at plus money. I'm still deciding if I want to play it at -150. This might be another one where I just watch, or maybe if I can find like a round 1/2 line, that's something I end up playing. But I don't know. I didn't see the inside the distance line at -150 and like dive to play it, so still kind of deciding on this one. But if I'm going to play something, that's kind of the avenue I'm taking, a Chimaev finish. Maybe I throw the -330 in a parlay if I've won a couple bets beforehand. I don't love it, but I do think Khamzat, I don't love it, the number for betting, but Khamzat Chimaev, I do think he gets this win at a relatively high clip. I think he gets the finish here within the first 2 rounds. I don't think we see a third round, to be honest. Next up, Islam Makhachev taking on Alexander Volkanovski. This is the fight everyone has been waiting for. They're going for round 2. In the first fight, I thought Islam won 3-2, 4-1. I didn't think Volk did quite enough to steal the victory, but I understand people yelling for it. But this was definitely a fight I was open to seeing again. It was a sick fight, and I do think Volk is capable of winning this kind of fight. But the circumstances I don't love here. It's hard because I don't know if I would ever call Volk off the couch, but just having that hand surgery, I don't think he was training as hard as he typically would. He doesn't look doughy or anything, but at 155 last time, he still had the abs. He doesn't have abs or anything. And again, I don't think it's going to take too big of a hit on his cardio. I think he's a guy that's got that kind of dog in him, that cardio. He can go 5 rounds. But Is the pace going to be there the same as last time? The crowd's going to be, obviously, the crowd can't fight for Islam, but I just think being in Abu Dhabi, it puts some sort of weight on you as the opponent of a guy where this Abu Dhabi crowd's going to support. It's going to be like the home crowd for him. And Volk's talking about how this is kill or be killed for him. He wants to go out there and try and finish Islam. He's been calling within 3 rounds, so I don't know if he's questioning his own cardio coming off of the couch, or if this is one where he just feels he needs to finish it to get the victory, which I totally understand. So if he's able to hurt Islam early, maybe he can go out there and get the finish, but how I see this playing is Islam being, again, on the feet, countering well. He did well last time. He landed some big shots. He's got big power as well. Obviously, he's always improving. His body kicks were great. I saw a video, or his body kicks were great in the last fight, and I saw a video about by Demetrius Johnson, Mighty Mouse, talking about how he could use those to his advantage in this fight again. And I have to think that's something his camp saw as well, how well those body kicks were working. So I like Islam to get a lot of those going again. I thought that was a good point from Mighty Mouse. Obviously, he's going to go out there and wrestle like he does. He's going to be able to get those takedowns at time. He's going to have Volk in bad positions. I think we see Islam Makhachev get this victory again. Whether it's by finish or not, I don't know. This probably isn't one I'm going to play betting-wise. I'm going to sit back and watch this one for sure. But I do think we see Islam Makhachev and Still, and then possibly go up to 170 and take on the winner of Colby Leon. That could be very interesting, but there's also fights to make at 155 pounds. I'd love to see Gaethje get another shot at the title. We have Gamrot, who's waiting. There's definitely some interesting fights for Islam to make after this, and obviously for Volk too. If somehow he's able to get this done, Volk versus Gaethje would be incredible. Obviously that wouldn't happen first, but we'd get the trilogy with Islam because they'd be one apiece. That would be crazy, the double champ Volk. I can't wait for this fight. The card is sick. We get on to the Savage Rounds parlay. This is the other bet I've already locked in. I played it yesterday, I do believe. Victoria Dudikova, money line, minus 550. I don't love the number, but I think she should handle Jinh Frey quite easily. And then I talked about it. I really like Said Nurmagomedov in this spot. I think he's better everywhere. I think he has all 3 paths to victory: decision, KO, sub. I like sub and KO, or sub and decision a lot. I think he gets one of those. This is the first time a Savage Rounds parlay hasn't been in the plus money. It's minus 139. So we're going to do it a little differently this time. We're going 1.5 units to win. I think it's like 1.07 units. I just always want him to be getting a unit back. So I think we're turning around the luck this week. I won't even call it luck. I really like both of these plays. We've had some tough ones, like the Fiziev losses in there. He shredded his knee in the first round. There's not much you can do about that. So this loss streak hurts a little bit, but I think we can turn it around here. We're still plus 3.1 units. I think we get a unit back hereafter. We're up. It'll be like 4.17, and then we can start the win streak back from there. We move, and we'll build again. I think we got up to like plus 7 units at one point, which I think we'll get back. I really do. But yeah, this is the Savage Rounds parlay. I'll run through all the picks again. I'm going Shara. I'm going Dudikova, Nathaniel Wood, Mike Breeden as the underdog. That's my only underdog pick, I do believe. Cedric Dumas, Javid Bashrat, Trevor Peek, Mohamed Makhachev, Said Nurmagomedov, Ikram Aliskerov, Magomed Ankalaev, Khamzat Chimaev, and Islam Makhachev to get the victory. UFC 294. I can't wait. I will see you guys Monday or Tuesday to talk about what happens, see how the bets went. Yeah, drop a like and subscribe. Peace.